So today, we need to talk about the WNBA CBA because something just happened that might actually mean we're closer to a deal than people realize. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This might be the biggest concession the league has made so far. The 70% net revenue bombshell. Here's what changed. The league's latest proposal offers players 70% of net revenue, but this time without a trigger threshold. And that part, that's huge. Before this, the deal was structured like this. Let's get into it. Players would get 70% of net revenue, but only if certain revenue targets were hit. If those targets weren't triggered, they got nothing extra. No bonus, no additional revenue share, just base salary. Now, the trigger is gone. That means the 70% net revenue is guaranteed, not conditional. And that changes everything. Why this is massive. If you remember how the salary cap structure was previously laid out, there was a range, a lower number if revenue targets weren't met, a higher number, sometimes $1.1 million to $1.4 million difference. If they were, now we're talking about guaranteed upside. Average salaries pushing past $500,000. Salary cap potentially jumping towards $7 to $8 million. This is not a small adjustment. This is the league saying, fine, we'll remove the safety net. You're guaranteed to split. That is a major move from ownership. Let's be real about the 2020 CBA. Players signed a 2020 deal, and respectfully, it was a brutal deal. They needed 20% year-over-year revenue growth just to trigger benefits. If it didn't trigger in year one, it basically wasn't going to trigger. And guess what? It only finally triggered in 2025. That tells you everything. So yes, players are understandably cautious. They don't want to get burned again. But this proposal is fundamentally different. Gross versus net, the buzzword problem. Here's where things get complicated. Players are pushing for a gross revenue share instead of net. Sounds better, right? Gross sounds bigger. Net sounds smaller. But here's the reality most fans don't understand. If the league doesn't exist, the players make $0. A strike, a lockout, no season. That means no paychecks. And the idea that everyone just goes overseas and makes millions, that's fantasy. Yes, someone like Caitlin Clark would make millions overseas. But the average player? Most overseas contracts are closer to $40,000 to $100,000. Maybe 40 to 50 players worldwide make over $100,000 abroad. That's it. We remember exceptions like Diana Taurasi getting massive money in China at her peak. Liz Cambridge landing unique deals with wealthy ownership backing. Those are exceptions, not the rule. The average player is not making millions overseas. The cost of gross revenue. Here's what nobody is talking about. If players demand gross revenue, owners will cut expenses. That likely means no charter flights, no housing guarantees, no minimum facility standards, no additional operational investments. Because if players take revenue before expenses are deducted, owners will reduce those expenses. You don't get gross revenue and full luxury spending from ownership. It's one or the other. That's the trade-off. Risk versus reward. At this point, we've crossed into dangerous territory. The owners just remove the trigger threshold. That guarantees players their 70% net revenue. That's massive. Could players negotiate a bit more over the next 2 weeks? Absolutely. Should they fight for a higher salary cap? Maybe $7 to $8 million? Yes, but here's the problem. If this turns into a strike over wording, gross versus net, the risk now outweighs the reward. A lockout doesn't hurt just one season. It damages momentum. It damages sponsorships. It damages growth. And both sides know the league is growing, but owners are still thinking, what if it doesn't? That's business reality. The one-year option? Honestly, if I were both sides, I'd consider a one-year bridge deal. Keep momentum, lock in growth, renegotiate when revenue data is even stronger, because no season benefits nobody. The bottom line, this is the biggest concession we've seen from ownership, by far. And if this collapses purely because of optics, because the deal doesn't say gross revenue, that's a dangerous gamble. fight for more money, push the deadline, maximize leverage. But if we see a strike at this stage, that means both sides chose pride over progress. And that's when the entire future of the league gets put at risk.